So recently I was coming back from a break and noticed that my parents were quite concerned about me and my mental health and well-being. Specifically, they had noticed that I was more tired and seemed to be in a constant cycle of burning out, propping myself back up, and burning out again. And they also noticed that I was less happy than I used to be. Now, at that time, I was doing quite a bit. I was involved as a club president, I was rushing a fraternity, I was trying to start and maintain a long-distance relationship, and I was doing all of that while getting less and less sleep and trying to maintain a high academic standard as an electrical engineer. Now, my parents weren't the only one that picked up on this. In fact, almost anybody who knew me could see the strain that I was putting myself under. And they would tell me things like, David, you're setting way too high of standards for yourself. Or something else like, David, you're so focused on what you're doing wrong that you're not seeing all of the many things that you're doing right. However, I would just snap back with something like, well, that's great that I'm doing something great, but I want to push myself to do even better. So welcome to the life of a perfectionist. Well, ultimately, the lifestyle that I was living and the habits that I was trying to implement in my life resulted in me suffering even more. I was more tired, felt more disconnected from my friends, was struggling as a club president, and just continually seemed to be burning out. And after some persuasion from my parents, I was persuaded to go to a psychologist where I was informed that my tendencies were almost characteristics of a perfectionist. And it was there that I learned what perfectionism is, how I could overcome those tendencies, and also how to start enjoying my life again. And after that meeting, I also learned that perfectionism is something that affects many college students and young adults. However, almost nobody talks about it. For me, perfectionism was something that affected my relationships and energy levels. But for many other people, perfectionism can result in other health disorders and mental health problems. And that's why today I'm here to start that conversation on perfectionism, so that we can find those people in our communities who are struggling from perfectionism and to help them develop healthier habits and a healthier lifestyle to start enjoying their lives. So what is perfectionism, you may ask? Well, to start, perfectionism isn't something that necessarily has to be self-imposed. In fact, the American Psychological Association defines 3 varieties of perfectionism. To start, there is self-imposed perfectionism, which is defined as an irrational desire to be perfect. People suffering from this type of perfectionism will often say things like, well, good isn't good enough to fill in the blank. And whether it's something as complicated as getting into medical school, or something as simple as trying to live a healthier life, these people often feel that what they are doing will never be enough to achieve their impossibly high standards. The second form of perfectionism is others-oriented. And this is where someone feels that other people are placing too high of standards on them. And this could be something like feeling that your parents won't love you if you don't do well in school. Or another thing like feeling that your classmates will look down on you if you don't do well giving a presentation or a speech. And finally, there's others-oriented perfectionism, where somebody feels that other people should be perfect. In a way, it's kind of like expecting other people to be perfect with you. And while there's a variety, there are 3 types of perfectionisms. There are some common characteristics that perfectionists often have in common. So the University of San Diego Health Center defines a variety of characteristics of perfectionists. To start, perfectionists often exhibit a sort of fear of failure or disapproval. And they often compare themselves to others in a way that results in unhealthy habits. Perfectionists also view their mistakes as evidence of incompetence and are often closed-minded to criticism. However, these tendencies are only amplified in a college atmosphere for college students and young adults, where social media posts like this encourage people and tell them that no obstacle is enough, and encourage them to push and push and push to get better and better. In fact, a New York Times article stated that perfectionism as a result of social media has increased by 33% since 1989. And on top of it, it's not just from social media posts. It could be things like school and academics, where students are pushed to get high GPAs from almost all levels of school, from grammar school to graduate school. In fact, that same New York Times article also stated that, or jokingly stated that, students are often majoring in perfectionism and not their actual major. But perfectionism can also result in other things, or come from other things, like body image and the pressure to have a quote-unquote perfect body, which can lead people to push into perfectionism. And oftentimes, sadly, these perfectionistic tendencies tend to pile up and result in other mental health disorders. The American Psychological Association even said that perfectionism was positively correlated to resulting in things like depression and anxiety, and in some serious cases, even suicidal thoughts. Often, though, perfectionists also exhibit things like procrastination and poor time management because of a sort of all or nothing mentality. And this oftentimes pushes them to do things which result in burnout, which can also be a bad thing. And so ultimately, while perfectionism may seem like this really great thing that pushes us to do better, we must ask ourselves what price we're willing to pay. And it becomes sort of clear that we need to find an alternative. We need to find something that doesn't push people to the brink of depression and anxiety. We need to find something better. Now, sometimes the smallest change in our lives, or change in perspective, can result in a much bigger effect in the way we live our lives. Now, this was something that I learned during the course of overcoming my perfectionism. During my discussions with the psychologist, he told me about something called healthy striving, and explained it to be something that was a simple change in attitude and perspective, but it was centered on enjoying the process and being okay with making mistakes and not doing everything to perfectionism. Now, healthy striving is centered on a few central ideas. To start, it's centered on recognizing our humanity. It's about acknowledging that we make mistakes and that it's okay not to do everything to perfection. Secondly, it's about setting realistic goals by setting reasonable expectations. And to start, this is through something like setting small goals that are really easily achievable to get our confidence up, to start progressing toward bigger goals. Third, it shifts the focus toward the actual activity and away from the end result. It's about, again, enjoying that process and recognizing that at some point, good enough is indeed good enough, that it doesn't have to be perfect. And finally, healthy striving is about making time for other things in our life. And oftentimes this involves setting time limits, things that will allow us to maintain that balance in our lives. And so ultimately, healthy striving seeks to provide this approach that allows people to simply enjoy their lives more and to worry less about the end results and to worry less about being perfect. And practicing healthy striving doesn't have to mean that you're less successful. People like Warren Buffett and Mary Oliver are perfect examples of people who exhibited healthy striving by experiencing success in their careers while at the same time enjoying the other things in life. Warren Buffett was a successful tycoon in the financial world, and Mary Oliver, a poet who has a knack for turning the most mundane of experiences into something in a sort of spiritual excellence. And they both share two common characteristics. They have a knack for being really successful in their careers, and they also were able to balance their lives and to take time off from the busyness of daily life, of their careers. Warren Buffett has a knack for, or is known for going to McDonald's in the mornings and taking that time away from the fast-track financial world. And Mary Oliver was known to plunk out poetry on her typewriter, knowing that these poems would never be published and that they were just for her and for her enjoyment. So, what can we do? Well, the easy answer would be to stop being perfectionists, but let's be honest, it's a lot harder than that. Moving away from perfectionist habits and toward healthy striving is difficult, and it is a long journey ahead to move into those healthy striving habits. However, we can start by taking small steps. First, you can help somebody you know or even yourself acknowledge your perfectionistic tendencies. And by doing that, you help yourself get started on that journey away from perfectionism and toward that healthier life. From there, maybe a next step is setting small, reasonable goals. And just keep on going. Now, I can definitely attest to the fact that perfectionism is not an easy thing to overcome, and it will take time. I'm even still in the process of overcoming it. But one step at a time, and little by little, you'll get there. And that's the important thing to know. So thank you for your time, and I hope that in doing this and in starting this conversation, we can all start moving away from perfectionistic habits, and then we can encourage other people to do the same as well. Thanks.